Traveler by Mark Miller. This is the 1977 facsimile edition of the Three Little Black Books. I've been very curious to see how this game handles Starship combat. Fans of the channel will know that I have, of late, been running a live solo campaign of this particular game. I was waiting for an organic battle to develop. It just hasn't happened. Reading the rules carefully, you will see that Mark is way ahead of his time by issuing us a nice little cop-out. Today, we will be looking at the vector movement, using the planetary formula to produce additional gravity effects of gravity wells when you pass through there. For those of you who are fit the mold of your typical tabletop role-playing gamer, Mark does provide this section here. In the course of normal adventures, Starship travel should be subject to the encounters. Generally, the encounter table should be consulted. Ship encounters may be made an easily included part of adventure, abbreviating the movement requirements. In essence, when an encounter occurs, shots are traded without regard to range. When one vessel elects to flee, the referee then states a certain number of shots may be made before the ship is out of range. You're done. Hey, you got 5 turns. If you can survive, then you can jump out. We're not going to look at that today. We are going to look at the full-fledged battle system. Here we see a pirate vessel that has just lifted off from a 7,000-mile diameter planet, only to discover that what he thought was a helpless trader is a bit of a missile cruiser. It is an anti-piracy ship. Our cruiser is blasting into the system to catch these pirates unawares. He has a speed and direction of 2 inches in this direction. The pirate is blasting out of the shell of out of the gravity well of the planet, has just now realized his mistake, and we'll get to what that means here in a little bit. His initial vector movement is 1 inch in this direction. Before we can start plotting movement and targeting our guns, I need to explain the ship capabilities and what I've done, because frankly, the internet does not like Proto Traveler. Most of the blogs that I can find talking about Proto Traveler were well-intentioned people saying, this could be interesting, let's take a look at it, and all of the smart boys saying, Mark Miller's a goofus, and I am a much better game designer than him, and no, you've never heard of me, but I really definitely improved upon his design. It's a little embarrassing, it's also a little typical. So what I had to do is either build my own ships using book 2 of the Three Little Black Books, or cheat a little bit, and I decided to cheat. You can take me to task in the comments. I used supplement number 9. These are fighting ships to create the VDC Minderbender. For those of you that don't know, VDC is the Voight Defense Corporation. It is a mercenary outfit in the ongoing campaign which I am running. This 400-ton cruiser comes from fighting ships. It has 2 triple lasers. It has maneuver 4, jump 4, power plant 5, which equates to H, H, and J. It holds 81 tons of fuel, meaning we've got 81 tons that we can play. Probably not going to matter. He has a launch capability of 2 and electronic countermeasures. It is an armored vessel. The Jumping Dutchman is our pirate vessel, which comes from Book 7, Traders and Gunboats. It is also a 400-ton vessel. Bear in mind, these 2 supplements really are part of Classic Traveler, which means I had to kind of back calculate what these things meant. Both of these vessels are 300-ton vessels, which, if you are familiar with Proto Traveler, don't exist. When you build your starship using Proto Traveler, you have hulls of 100, 200, and 400. To split the difference, I gave both ships 100-ton excess fuel tanks, like exterior tanks, which reduced their capability to 4. And I said, okay, well, if they have a maneuver of 4 and a jump of 4, they must have jump drive, maneuver drive, and power plants of either H or J. I gave them drives of H and a power plant of J, which I think will come in handy later on. It gives them a little bit more survivability. I've also kind of hand-waved a little bit the computer models. These ships both have a Model 6 computer, which gives them 15 slots, which is more than enough. So I've limited their capabilities based upon the programs available to them. They all have maneuver. That program will allow them to make changes in their direction and their thrust. They all have Predict 3. They have 2 gunners. meaning they can select 2 weapons to fire on any given turn. They all have multi-launch, meaning they can target 2 vessels, although since it's a 1v1, that won't come in. They have launch, and then they both have evade 4, so they can add their pilot skill when they evade, and the pirates have anti-missile technology. The VDC Mindbender does not have anti-missile. The anti-missile allows you to target missiles with your lasers. It has electronic countermeasures. The other difference is that the pirate has pulse lasers, and the pirate hunters have beam lasers. The pirates have 3 charges in their sandcaster and 2 missiles. The Minderbender has a total of 10 missiles, 5 in each of the 2 excess hardpoints. Bear in mind, they still only have 2 gunners, so on any turn where they launch missiles, they won't be able to fire one of their triple laser turrets. So with all that out of the way, I think we're ready to take a look at how this combat operates. For our player turn, you have to designate one of the ships the intruder and one the native vessel. We'll call the pirates the natives. They are, after all, coming up from the planetary surface. We'll call the pirate hunters the intruders. That means that our turn sequence starts with the intruder movement. He moves his ship using the movement, gravity, and other applicable rules. What that means, remember what I said, he will start, and on this turn, he is able to move, as we start, he has a vector movement of 2 inches in this direction. 1 inch equals 1,000 miles, hence our planet with a 7,000 mile diameter is 7 inches across. That's his movement at the start of the turn. He does have a drive capability of 4, so he can change his vector movement by up to 4, meaning he could apply a vector movement of 4 inches long. He could apply a boost to here, in which case his final movement at the end of so he's already moving 2 inches this way. If I thrust 4 inches in this direction, then I draw that thrust here, drop a point there, and he actually winds up right there, and this is his new thrust. Whatever that value is, it looks like it's about 5.5 inches in this direction. That will be his thrust at the start of the next turn. As it is, we are going to apply we'll call it, and we know this guy is moving 1 inch in this direction, but he's going to be pushing off somewhere else. So what we're going to do is we're going to only apply 2 inches of thrust, and we will apply those 2 inches of thrust in this direction, meaning that here's our, and I should probably, you know what I'll do? I'll draw our thrust in dotted lines. So here you can see his final location will be right here, and his new thrust will be approximately 3 7/8. So here's our Corsair, and his new thrust is 3 3/4 in that direction. Then we do the intruder laser fire. But before we get to that, I forgot to point out, detection. Starships can be detected at approximately 500 inches. These are 8.5-inch pieces of paper, so of course, range is effectively unlimited. I have started these ships very close because ships in orbit around a world and maintaining complete silence can't be detected at distances greater than 10 inches. Technically, I probably should have started my Corsair 10 inches away, but again, I've added in the additional complicating factor that the Corsair, the pirate, dropped his radio silence when he thought there's no chance of the Corsair getting away. The hunted has become the hunter. In Traveler, you are rolling 2d6 against a target number of 8. In the case of laser fire, you have a couple of different modifiers that we may need to explain. A targeting program. Well, we have Predict 3. We don't have any of those, I don't think. But we do have in this case, we're firing beam lasers. So we have Predict 3. We're going to be at +2. Our gunners have a skill of 1. We're at a total of +3. But the bad guys have a program called Evade 4, which allows them to add their pilot skill of 1 So our total bonus of 3 becomes a bonus of 2. If your range is greater than 150 inches, again, that's pretty far. If you're going to play this game for real with multiple ships, you may want to get some butcher paper to make it all work out okay. So you roll your dice. As I said, we're at a total of +3. We're looking for an 8 or better. And with the result of an 8, we score a hit with one of our weapons. And then with the second weapon, I score a 2, which is a miss. So with that one hit, it is a triple laser, which I believe means that we will do 3 different types of damage. Well, we're going to hit one thing 3 times. We roll 2d6 to find out what our hit location is. And with the result of an 8, we've struck the hold. It is a starship. So we've blown out the pirate's hold. That could damage items in the hold. Dice to determine which items are damaged. That may be reparable under the expendables rule. But we don't need to worry about that. So that is the only hit. So that effectively doesn't do any damage to the pirate vessel. The intruder has fired. Now the native gets to return fire. And as I said, he has all of the same modifiers, except his weaponry isn't quite as good as the military weaponry. He is firing pulse lasers instead of beam weapons. He has an additional -1. That puts him at a total of +2. He takes 2 shots, and with the result of a 5, he misses with the first, and that pirate's going to have to walk the airlock. The second pirate is going to fire, and with a 6 + 2, he gets an 8, and the pirate vessel returns fire and scores a 9 on the hit location, meaning that he is going to damage the fuel. When you damage your opponent's fuel, each hit costs the vessel 20 tons of fuel. The Minder Bender only has 81 tons of fuel, and because they accelerated, that would be down to 80. They are now down to just 20 tons of fuel left. If they take another hit of that sort, they're going to be out of the fight, or drifting out of the fight. Next up, the intruder launches ordnance. And he would love to launch sand, and sand is not like beach sand. It's an anti-missile technology that confounds laser fire. It makes a cloud around you, but that sand will continue to move at the same vector movement that the vessel is right now. That's not going to do him a lot of good, because on his turn, he is absolutely going to be blasting away. Instead, why don't we go ahead and launch one of our missiles? They are fairly frugal. They've only got 3. They have fired... Oh, they fired twice. Oh, we should have only fired one of our lasers. So we cannot fire the missile that we would like to try to delay this guy. Instead, the intruder now changes his programming. This isn't going to be an effect for us, but in terms of smaller vessels, where you have a small computer, our computers can hold 15 programs, which is more than enough. If you can only hold 6 programs, you may decide, you may have to swap out between taking evasive action versus shooting back at your enemies. Not an issue for us, as I said. Instead, we go on to the native player turn, and the native player now does his movement. And as I said, he hasn't taken any damage, so he is going to try to book it. Seeing that his opponent is moving in that direction, he is going to apply an additional 5 inches. So here's his vector movement. But notice there's something different going on here. So he's moving in this direction. And normally, if he did nothing else, he would stop at this point right here. But because he is in the gravity well, that's where these bands apply. And I wrote them upside down because I am silly. This is the 0.5, this is 0.75, and this is 1.0 G, or you exploded into the planet's surface. Because he is in this band, this is 0.75, this is 0.5, he just got out of there. This is the 0.05, pulling him back down to the planetary surface. So he has an extra vector pointing in this direction, and he would land there, but as it is, he's going to try to escape. He's going to blast a full 4 centimeters in this direction, so we have to, in fact, we'll kind of hook it along this way. So if we put the 4 right there, this is where he's going to wind up. That's how the vector movement works. It's just 3 legs, but it's important to remember that he doesn't actually travel by this zigzag path. He travels by this path, meaning his new heading is going to be, again, oh, here he is out here, 4.75. So I'm going to write that down. He's traveling in that direction at 4.75 inches. And now he's really cooking. So you can see that the cruiser is moving in that direction. The pirate is moving in that direction. And this is where he stops. When we figure out, and I gotta be honest, I've never done this before. I'm figuring this out as we go. I just realized I don't have a whole lot of paper in this direction. So what I'm gonna do is expand outer space this way. But first, why don't we go ahead and do the native laser fire? Our natives get to take a shot, and this is a new turn. So they'll take 2 shots at the cruiser. They're going to get that's a 10, so that's 1 hit, and they get a 10 for 2 hits this time. We roll for 2 locations, and with a result of an 8, is that another fuel hit? I think the pirate is going to get away. No, that hits the hold, so it does additional damage to whatever. Now, both of these ships technically have a gig, which is a smaller vessel, which would allow you to play a more interesting game with kind of a 2-on-2. But again, because it's our first time, we're doing a fumble through. We'll just ignore that. And then 11 becomes a turret, and that means one of these 4 turrets is struck for the Minder Bender and damaged and unable to fire. So since we have 4 turrets, I am going to roll a single d6, and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. A random turret is struck, and I'll re-roll 5s and 6s. So these 5 missiles are now out of the fight. The Corsair gets to return fire now. And remember, they're a total of +3. So the 5 will be a hit, and that 6 will also be a hit. Looking at the hit location table, we get an 8, so that's, wow, a lot of hold strikes. Whatever the pirates had in there is gone, and a 6 is going to be the hull. When you strike the hull, the damage that results, it decompresses the ship's hull interior. Further hull hits have no effect. In the case of the game, of the role-playing game, better hope everybody's in vac suits. We'll assume battle stations for the cruiser. The pirates are hoping to intercept. Everybody's in vac suits. So for the ship-to-ship combat, there is no effect on that one. But we do have an effect of the natives now the natives get to launch ordnance, and they fired twice. So again, probably should have only fired once if they wanted to drop a missile to chase off the cruiser. I need a lot more space, so I just taped a couple of more pieces of paper down. To finish off their turn, the pirates would reprogram their computer. That may happen if the computers get damaged before this fight is over. As it stands, the intruder gets to move now, and he says, oh my lord, I need to get back into this fight. I am going to blast all 4 of my G's in this direction. Now, he does continue. His original vector is 3.75 inches. He would normally land right here. But because we're blasting 4 inches in this direction, he's going to wind up. So here's our thrust vector. And that's just a fancy word for distance and direction. Instead, our Corsair is going to wind up right here. And maybe that's the better way to do it. We'll do dark lines for the actual direction that our ships have gone. And I can also, you know what would make this even more appealing, particularly here in video format? I am going to draw the vector for the pirate in red. So the pirate follows this line, and I'll draw the pirate hunter in black. This is the actual direction that the ship takes. That means that while he stops right here, his new direction, see there's 1.5 inches, we'll make a little note. On the next turn, he's going to be 1.5 inches in that direction. That costs him a fuel. He is now down to 19 fuel. If his fuel tank takes one more hit, he's in trouble. And this time, we're only going to fire once. We're going to save one of our gunners for launching a missile. So we take the shot. We get a score of a 9, which is a hit. And we do... And there is a program that allows you to target specific ship's systems, but we're not using that program because I want to show you how the hit location table works. We hit the hull a second time. Now he's already decompressed, so I don't think we need to worry about that. The pirates will do well. They might as well fire twice because they can't fire ordnance on the enemy's turn. So they fire twice. They get a hit, and they get a 5, 6, 7. That's a miss. So the one hit they get will land on the hull, and that depressurizes, but our Corsair is ready for it. So we move on to launch ordnance, and the pirate hunters want to launch a missile. After a cursory glance through the rules, I don't see an acceleration listed for the missiles. So we launch a missile, it won't move until the next cruiser turn, and it will start with the same vector as the ship what launched it. So that was our cruiser's launch turn. And we go back to native movement. Remember, his original vector is 4.75 inches in this direction. Absent any sort of thrust, he would wind up right here. But because he's trying to evade this vessel, which is blasting in that direction, he says, I'm going to blast 4.5 inches, basically in the opposite direction. So if we look at it from his perspective, he's going to blast a full 4 inches down here. You don't need math to figure out how this works, though. You simply lay down. Let's see. There's our 0.75. There's one. So if we continue this parallel, it'll actually be ... to 4.75 to right there. And then you just lay down your 4 inches in this direction and say he's blasting. This is the thrust, and he's going to wind up right here. So his total thrust for the turn is going to be, well, it's going to be a little longer than the 6 inches that I've got on this ruler. I just need a bigger ruler. Because now he is proceeding at, we got to use the red so it shows up a little better. There's his new movement, and that is going to be 6.5 inches in this direction. So you can see after just 2 turns of thrust, he winds up right there. He is not 150 inches away. He really can't be because I'm playing on a small little kitchen counter. But he can fire once at his enemy, and with a 4 he'll miss, but he's going to drop a missile, and I'll use blue. Now that missile is also going to have a vector of 6.5 inches in that direction. I can't find anywhere that in the rules where it says what the missile's actual thrust is. So I'm just going to call it 6. They have a thrust of 6. But before he launches that, this old boy, the cruiser, gets to take 2 more shots. And he gets a hit, and he gets a 7. He gets 2 hits. I think I'm supposed to be rolling for all 3 of those hits individually. But just for the sake of speed and expedience, we're just going to call it, I'm going to roll once on the hit location table and call it 3 damage, as you've seen. So we get the hold, and then with a 5, we hit the ship's computer, and now we need to start thinking about what happens. Because with that hit on the ship's computer, every time this Starship tries to use its computer to do something, he's going to have to check to see if the computer goes on the fritz. Every hit gives you a -1. You start out at +1, but with our -3 for that shot, he's now going to be at a total of -2. Oh, wait, it says the basic throw, you need a 1 or better. But now we have a -3 on all of our rolls. So we have to start rolling. And if we get a negative number when we do something, in other words, we're going to launch, and we need to get a 6 minus 3, we get a 3, the launch is successful. So everything we do is going to be affected by that for our pirate. But I think because he only fired once, dropped the missile, then that missile will move on his next movement turn. We kick back over to the intruder's turn. And once again, the first thing he'll do is try to catch up to the pirate. And he will use all 4 of his thrust to set a parallel course. Now, he does still move. Oh, here's our guy. He's moving 1.5 inches. Oh, let me get that back on camera. Sorry about that. So his initial thrust is 1.5 inches in this direction. And he's going to blast 4 inches on a parallel course, which will put him right here to end. But his actual movement vector will look like this, and that is going to be 4.5 inches. So there's where he winds up. You can see he's getting there. He's catching him. Now he fires, and he says, you know, I'm going to drop another missile, so I'm just going to fire 1 time. I get a 4 plus 3 is a 7. That's a miss. The pirate gets to countershoot, and he's going to fire twice. Oh, but remember, he's got to see if his targeting computer works. Then he has to see if his predict works to give him the +2. And on right now, the only way he fails is if he rolls a 3 or less. So both of those computers will work, and he is for the first shot. So now we're ready to fire, and we hit with the first shot. Now, can he target? With a 4, oh, -3 is 1. It works. So he targets. He tries to see if he can predict where this guy is going. Remember, this is the general movement. We're assuming that there's a bunch of evasive maneuvers happening. So he hits with that shot 2. We get the 2 shots off, and we wind up hitting on the hold and on the hold. So wildly inaccurate fire, but I guess we'll take it. That was the intruder turn. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on this guy's turn, right? So now that he's done, I guess the missile moves at the same time. So the missile has a thrust of 6, and the missile is going to automatically lock on to the direction where the ship was located. So its target, when it was launched, it was going to be on a heading like this. But remember that its thrust vector was 1.5 inches in that direction. So we have to shift that heading up to here. And that missile comes streaking in. Let me grab the green pencil so we match the color. And that missile is going to wind up right here with a thrust of, winds up being about 6. And that is its average location. Now bear in mind, it probably kind of swooped around and came in this way, but this is where the missile winds up at the end of the movement phase. And you can see that our pirate doesn't have long to live. But for his part, the pirate also launched a missile, and I think we're just about done with that phase of the turn. The intruder launched ordnance. We're not going to do that, so we did natives return fire. And then the intruder can change his computer programming, but we're not going to do any of that. So it goes on to the native movement, and this is where the native missile fires. The native missile, well, first of all, let's just say the native is going to blast another 6.5 inches away, which means I need to add another piece of paper. Here's our pirate. 6.5 inches puts him here. He's riding hell-bent for leather. He's going to drop 4 inches of thrust to right here, and now his total thrust is going to be right there. Oh, I got to use the red one. So our pirate is going to blast along this red line, and he's going to wind up right here with a total thrust of, to no one's surprise, 10.5 inches. But back at this point, before we do cannon fire, the ordnance fires. His missile has a total thrust of 6.5 inches in this direction, which would put it right here at that same point. It's going to thrust 6 inches. Well, it will thrust 6 inches in the direction of the vessel that it was chasing when it was launched, which would be back in this direction. Remember, when it was launched, the vessel was its target was right here, I believe. So we'll keep the same heading, and we'll drop that missile right about here. Now, this is, of course, its planned movement. So if it stops right here, its total thrust is going to look like this. So that missile goes to here, and its thrust vector is 1.75 inches. And again, it probably wind up looping around like this, but for the sake of simplicity, we just add the two vectors together and we're done. So with the movement done, our pirate vessel, still in range, is going to take 2 shots. His turret works, and he can take the shot. His second shot, with a 3, his targeting works, but his computer is out. So the first shot will be at +2, and that's a miss. Its second shot, he doesn't have the predict program. He's going to be at an even Stevens. He needs to roll an 8, and he misses with that shot. So here's where the damage begins to really tell. The Corsair gets to return fire, and the Corsair has no such problems. He gets a 6, which becomes a 9, and he hits, and he gets a 5, which becomes an 8. So we check for our location. And a 9 and a 5, this pirate is in trouble. The 9 is going to be a hit on the fuel. So they now drop down to, and if we lose track of how much fuel we've used, it's very easy. We got 1 here, 2 to there, and 3. So he started at 81. He is now at 17 because he took those 3 hits to the fuel. The 5 is another hit to the computer. The computer is now at a total of -6. He's not going to be able to make any changes. He might not even be able to open fire anymore. Hitting the computer is very deadly. Our pirate is, we should have rolled to see. Could he even maneuver? With a 3, he shouldn't have been allowed to maneuver on that turn. We'll let it go. Moving forward, he's at -6. He needs to roll a 7 to even change his heading and direction. But it's not his turn right now. And this is where, this is where he probably should have dropped it some sand. He also has electronic countermeasures, which, with a result of a 9, will work. That program's operational. But that only happens when the missile actually makes contact, which may not happen. If we can, we'll play like one more turn just to see, because it's gonna, our pirate, we may have to add one more piece of paper to see how this works. That's the end of the turn. Play kicks over to the pursuit turn, and we'll start with the missile, which has a vector of, I forgot to write it down, 6 inches. Adding 6, it will now have a full vector of, first we check, this is the direction that it wants to move. This is the direction that it is moving. And if you add those together, that missile is going to wind up right here with a total vector, I guess I probably should have wrote that down, of 12. So it's going to catch our guy on the next turn, regardless of what happens. So there's our missile with a 12-inch, and versus 10.5. It's going to catch up by 1.5 inches. It's only an inch away, so that's where the countermeasures will come in. But it hasn't happened yet. The Corsair accelerates. Now he's got a movement, his initial thrust vector. And I find it easier to line my ruler up in the same direction to 1 inch. And then I add the 4.5. And this is where, if he did nothing, he would wind up. But because he's in hot pursuit, he's going to add his 4 inches to his movement vector to right there. And that's going to give him a total vector movement of 8.5 inches. Then we can do our shooting. The Corsair fires, and he gets a 10 and a 10, and he's going to hit twice. He gets a result of a 10 and a 6. The 10 hits a turret, a random weapon goes down, and the hull takes another damage, but it was already explosively decompressed. I wonder if there isn't some other effect for the hull. It just says it decompresses. Further hits have no effect. But that hit on the weaponry will. We'll do the same thing. We roll. We roll a 6, so we got to re-roll. And for the pirates, they're going to lose one of their triple lasers. So we cross that off. That is an expensive piece of damage. Our pirate can only fire once, and in order to do so, he's got to activate his turret. That requires him, remember he's at -6. A 0 means his gun is jammed up. The computer refuses to operate, and play kicks back over to the pirate. The pirate is going to move his vessel. He's going to move another 12 inches away. But remember his little missile here? With a vector of 6. That's in blue. He's going to move. So we'll put this 1.75. That's where the pirate missile would stop. But it has a 6. Well, it would be moving in this direction. So it maneuvers. I wonder if it's got a homing, so maybe at this point it's going to have an impact. Kabow. Oh, no, actually, this is the actual movement of that missile. So it sweeps in and it detonates. But it won't detonate until the laser fire portion of the turn. Which I think... boop, boop, boop. There we go. So that missile lands home. And now we get to see what the electronic countermeasures do. Our cruiser has electronic countermeasures. And as we like to do here in the House of Wargaming, we love to read the rules. We break it out. The program jams and confuses the missiles. During the laser return fire phase, all missiles in contact are destroyed without damage to the ship on a throw of 7. But we're not there yet. First, we are actually, because the Corsair tried to fire and he missed, and now that missile strikes home, and on a 7 or better, it's a 6. Nothing happens. When a missile strikes home, it does D6 damage. And to make matters worse, subject to a -4 on this table. So the missile lands, and it does 3 damage, and we subtract 4 from each of our rolls. So that's a 0, 0, and this last one is a 6. So the hull takes another hit, but the cruiser loses 2 points from his power plant. And here we got to take a closer look at the cruiser's sheet, because it has a power plant of H. That's going to go down by 2, and that will affect its maneuvering and its thrusters. A 400-ton ship with a power plant of J can maneuver by 4. By taking a couple of hits, his power plant drops to G, and the most he can maneuver is 3. If he took 2 shots to his maneuver drives, he would be reduced to 3, even though he had sufficient power. Likewise, having insufficient power for his Class H drives means that he's only going to be limited to moving at 3. And in this manner, you can see how devastating missiles really are. With that -4, they're going to be hitting you in the power plant and the maneuver drives. This is how pirates make their living, by leaving you dead in the water. The cruiser gets to fire twice. And I guess I should point out that because he couldn't change his speed or heading because of his faulty computer, or even if he could, we're still within range. I'm just going to do this last turn. We take 2 more shots with the cruiser. He's going to miss with one of them, and he's going to, let's see, 5 plus 3. He'll hit with a second. He's going to wind up landing a shot on the pirate's turret weaponry. So the pirate loses a second weapon. And again, I got to double check. So with a result of a 1, the pirate will lose his other triple turret. He's down to just 1 missile. So I think we know who's going to win this fight. In all likelihood, it's going to be a costly victory. I'm not plotting the movement anymore because on this next turn, our pirate hunters are going to get closer. The missile is going to land home, and we'll see what the missile does. It is going to do 6 points of damage. So we have to roll 6 times on our hit locations. And this is even before the guns fire. So if we do 6, that's a hull. Oh, no, it's -3, right? So 2 is the power plant. A 3 is the maneuver drives. A 5 is the computer. So the computer is now up to a -9. So our power plant is going to be reduced by 1. The drives are going to be reduced by 1. What was that other one? The computer is now to -9. On a 5, the computer is completely shot. They can't use any of their programs anymore. They're basically a drifting hulk. And they still have a couple of more damages to go. They're at -12 on all their checks. There's no way to roll positive. A 2 is the power plant, and a 0 is, again, the power plant. So the power plant takes 3 hits, and their maneuver drives take 1. And oddly enough, this is something I'm not sure about. I got to be honest with you. I have to sit down and do a little table talk. Remember that the power plant was at a J. They took 3 hits, so they go to H, G, and F. And now, as you can see, they're going to be at a maneuver drive of 3. Their maneuver drive maximum was H. It falls to G, so they still have better drives. They just can't get power to the drives. And that's pretty much where we're going to leave it, with the pirates reduced to a toothless husk. Maybe they get 1 more missile off, and our electronic countermeasures put an end to it. So there's no hope for the pirates to knock this cruiser out, and the cruiser is going to be victorious. If we zoom way out and look way back, we can trace this entire battle across 4, maybe 5 pieces of paper. This is where things got a little hairy. Whoop, ignore that. That's a dotted line. But you can kind of trace out. And if we had a second ship, there might be a lot more maneuvering going on in here while we're trying to land a couple of blows. But I think this was an interesting exercise. Maybe if we had gone in the other direction and taken a little bit more advantage of the effects of this gravity well, then that might have changed things as well. But, you never know until you try, and you won't learn if you don't play the game. So don't take the word of people that are really good at theory. Don't take the word of people who say, wow, this vector movement is so complicated. I just showed you here in about 30 minutes that it's not that complicated. You step through it. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes per turn. This combat took, maybe 30 minutes? That is like a third the time of a 5th edition D&D game. Don't be afraid to play with these complicated systems. In a lot of cases, they are way simpler than you realize. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed this look at 1977 space combat pen and paper. You don't even need miniatures. You could put them down, but you don't need them. Till next time, I'm praying for you.